I overheard an elderly lady reporting an issue of a stolen purse. She was telling very emotionally how she was walking down the street, holding her purse in her hand, and when she finally came to the bus stop, she noticed that her purse was gone. But the policeman needed more specifics. What was the total price of purse and things inside? He asked. She responded, I don't know, maybe 120, 140. Fortunately, that day I didn't take any ID or money with me, so it wasn't much. The most expensive was the purse. It costed 80 zloty, and the things inside, well, there were 3 pairs of pants, 2 rolls, and a dairy cream to drink. Do you think reporting such minuscule issues even makes sense? Of course not. If the police found her purse, the dairy cream would have already gone off. Well, the lady failed to take into consideration big picture. The fact that it is highly improbable that anyone will ever find her purse in a relatively big city. It will be like looking for a needle in a haystack. But we humans tend to think in stories. We like to be in the center of everything and ignore factors outside of ourselves. Since humans started building settlements, houses, and explore the world, they would always draw maps with their settlement in the center. A few thousand years later, and we have staunch believers of geocentric theory. Statistics, probability, maths, that is all counterintuitive for us. Stories, on the other hand, give us a sense of perspective. We often relate to the main character that changes, tackles problems, falls in love, becomes successful, and eventually there is a happy ending. But life's not really like that. You are not, and you will never be, in the center of everything. In fact, there are 8 billion people in the world, and no one can be considered most important or main. Story inspires, but the story alone doesn't answer a question how to accomplish something from scratch. Most stories stress the power of I, but we as a collective can make a real change. An individual alone doesn't make a difference unless they influence others. When I was 13, I was really into zero waste. Inspired by people who produced 1 jar of trash every year, I implemented a few ideas to my household. And one of them was replacing chemical washing powder with homemade washing powder. So I bought the necessary ingredients, mixed them together. Everything was working well, but the problem was that one of the ingredients was soup, which I had to grate manually. The moment of distraction sufficed to cut my finger, and besides, the whole process took me a long time, and I realized that the value of my time was much higher than the potential profit. Whether I am doing this or not, the world remains basically the same. But helping our planet or humanity is often neglected, simply because forecasts seem to be too abstract for most of us. Well, however, when it comes to potential personal failures, most of us would just sit and wait and be like, yeah, everything's gonna be okay in the end, right? Well, it's a psychological fact. People don't like to think about bad things that happen to them, so they always underestimate the likelihood. But there is no reason to believe why bad things should be less likely than good things. It is just a wishful thinking. Most of us just hope it will be good and do not look at facts when thinking about a specific problem. Only the minorities find time to scrutinize and take a closer look. As Louis Pasteur once said, chance favors only the prepared mind. And that is why minorities are often right. This idea might seem counterintuitive for you, but history showed many times that minorities are worth listening to. When a big economic depression occurred in late 2007, only a few nerds were aware of the upcoming crisis. They just looked at numbers without any bias and concluded that the housing market in the USA and later the global market are going to crash. But everyone else thought they were lunatics, they were like, dude, come on. Housing market, it has always been a stable market and it will always grow. Well, in the end, it was these few nerds that that were rich, whereas others suffered a loss. In this day and age, it is really hard to tell who steers our world. New ideas, innovations emerge every day. New companies rise and fall. New shorter videos are posted. To put it simply, there is more and more of everything. We could say that the world is indeed grey, not black and white. But in reality, it is often better to treat it as if it was black and white. Nobody can deduce all the factors that come into play in a certain situation, and there is nothing wrong with it. Actually, overanalyzing, paying attention to details is bad because that makes you feel stranded, and when you feel stranded, it is hard for you to come to a concrete conclusion. As John Maynard Keynes put it, I would better be vaguely right than precisely wrong. Look at this glass. There are two panes in it. One is black, one is white. Everything is as simple as that. But when I mix them a little, here it's not that it doesn't look that way. Let me give a moment. Eventually, different shades of grey are starting to come out, and it's harder to make sense of it all. I mean, how are these hues called? What's their location? But anyway, inside of this glass, it's still the same thing. When you can make up your mind, try to put things straight by simplifying. As Leonardo da Vinci once said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So be sophisticated. Focus on what really matters. Try not to break a matter at hand apart, but rather bring it together and decipher what is the essence. A great way to start is by asking yourself this question, and most importantly, answer it in one or two words. What is the main idea that leads you through life? In other words, when you are about to make a decision, whether it's a big decision like who to marry or a small decision like which outfit should you pick, what is the one big thing that makes you pick one option instead of the other? Maybe it's happiness, feelings, or crave at the very moment. When you finally find that one motive, apply it even stronger to each decision you make. Make your every decision with this big objective in your head. For me, such objective is quality. And first and foremost, quality never goes along with quantity. Quality means giving something 100% effort and attention, while this seems impossible when quantity is prioritized. You cannot effectively manage more than a few projects. So quality also means high precision. It can be seen in linguistics. Have you ever wondered why swear words are actually considered bad? Well, basically swear words are kind of words that may be easily used, understood by everyone without much thinking in every situation. So for them to be easily applicable to every situation, their meaning must be wide. The less popular a word is, the more precise its meaning. So people who use words with narrow meaning just seem wiser. Narrow meaning indicates the speaker is a true professional who really knows the tools of the trade. But what is another thing that wise people do? They think long-term instead of short-term. Short-term thinking might be tempting, but it never is profitable in the long run, and it doesn't tell you the whole truth. Earth, in the exact place where you live, is flat, but looking at the whole planet, it is obvious that it is spherical. In this year, a new trend emerged among boys from my class: sports bets. One of them was lucky and won huge sum. Relatedly, his friends wanted the same. So they started betting small sums, hoping to win, and they were like, yeah, this bet's a banker. But was it? One time, I asked one of them whether he makes a profit or not, and as it turned out, he was 100 zloty in the red. But he claimed it often happened to him that he had been just so close to win, so it would be easy to make it up. Suffice to say, after a month or two, he quitted betting. This is an example of the law of near nothing practice. considering a chance of a certain event is often significantly smaller than a chance of a certain event plus neighboring events. Let's say Poland plays football game with Serbia and odds are most favorable for 4-3 score. But notice how 5-3, 3-3, 4-4 and 4-2 are also pretty probable scores, and all of them are so close. Betting is just one example of a short-term thinking. Fast game seems easy, but it never is. You see, what is harder is actually easier in the long run. But nowadays people don't believe that because we want everything faster and faster and our pace of life is faster. Actually, it can be checked by measuring speed of walking. In 1994 and 2006, groups of researchers measured the time pedestrians needed to cover 60-foot distance in different cities. And in a few of them, a trend emerged that we walk 2 seconds faster. But is being fast while going from point A to point B really that important, profitable? Well, frankly speaking, not much. Especially if A to B is just a part of a bigger plan, bigger road. And it usually is because A to B doesn't take us where we want. Let us consider this graph. Imagine you are a traveler and you start your journey at point A. You want to go through all of these points and come back to the very point A. These numbers are the numbers of kilometers, and you want to save on fuel, so you want to pick the shortest possible route. You consider the big picture perspective first, so you just compare a few different possible routes, and then you choose optimal solution. And in the end, you came up with this solution. From point A, you go to B, then you go to C. Even if you notice that C is actually 1 kilometer farther than E. Point E to point B distance is just 3 kilometers instead of 4. But then when you are at C, you go to D. Even for at the very point C, it's actually the longest distance. Point E is just 7 kilometers and point F is 15. And then you make a few moves and you come back to the point A. And in total, you traveled 62 kilometers. Now let's compare this score with your short-sighted friend, who is impatient and doesn't see a big picture. He just goes to the nearest point every time. When he's at the point A, he goes to B because it's 1 kilometer instead of 2. When he goes to B, he goes to E because it's 3 kilometers instead of 4. When he's at E, he goes to C because it's 7 kilometers instead of 8, etc., etc. And in total, he traveled 78 kilometers. And you save 16 kilometers by abandoning your instinct for fast profit and thinking long-term instead of short-term. But what is the most long-term thing in one's life? Death. But it's just another thing that seems normal, totally not scary while considering it from big picture perspective. And Wokulski, the main character from recognized book The Doll, really nicely put it in words. What is a fear of death? Delusion. To die is to be nowhere, to feel nothing and not to think about anything. So many places are there that I am not in Paris, on the moon, in the USA, and I am not bothered by it at all. And how many things haven't I thought about just before and now? I just think about some one specific thing, and at the same time, I don't think about billions of other things. I even know nothing about them, and I don't care. For that reason, what is said about not being in millions of places, just in one, and not thinking about billions of things, just about one, when I will eventually stop thinking about this very single thing and stop being in that very single place. Indeed, a fear of death is the most comic delusion humanity succumbs to. When you think in numbers, suddenly you notice that you are just a tiny little element in the world full of unknown. In that perspective, fear of death is irrational. But you don't even have to consider death to notice the magnitude of absence in our lives. Just look around this room. When you came in here, you probably noticed chairs, stage, walls, but most of it is just an empty, unused space. But void is good. It helps us to better grasp what is not void. You cannot be 100% productive and use any space seemingly available. When I was a little girl playing with cars, I would always try to fit as much cars on a parking lot as I could, and any spaces between them could drive me mad. Yeah, it was fun, but it just wouldn't work. Just look at this text. The most frequent character is space, and without space, it all would look like a mess. According to an app on my computer that measures my activity, I press space nearly 12 out of 100 times I press any key. Even the space itself is empty. The average density of the universe is just 6 protons per cubic meter. It's literally nothing. And what about air? Does air seem like nothing to you? Well, nothing could be farther from the truth. To get air density, you'd have to make average density of the universe 1,000 times bigger and make this number of stars in the observable universe times bigger. Your gut feeling might tell you that this space is wasted, but maybe these characteristics make the life as we know possible. Well, we can't deny it. Everything impacts one another in a way we cannot deduce, almost randomly. Love is the queen of feelings, maths is the queen of science. Let love motivate you, and then use maths to take control of the mechanisms of the world. Thank you.